Hello, I'm Jim Durrett, Mayor of Montgomery County.
And I'm Joe Pitts, Mayor of the City of Clarksville.
As you can imagine, over the last month, Mayor Pitts and I have received numerous questions about COVID-19 and what actions we're taking here in Clarksville and Montgomery County and how we're dealing with it. And so Mayor Pitts and I thought it'd be good to come together. We've sent out a questionnaire or sent out a request for questions, and we got over 100 questions back. And so we're going to try to answer those questions and let this go out to all the public, so we're not just on an individual email or text message or whatever.
Yeah, and thank you, Mayor Durrett, and thank you to the public who submitted the questions. We've tried to boil them down to the main topics, and we're going to, over this next few minutes, try to answer your questions, give you information to help you cope with this pandemic, but also understand our executive emergency orders. So let's get started with the first question.
So just to kind of set the scene where we are, we're in the county commission chambers. We have a big whiteboard in front of us. So Mayor Pitts and I are going to look down at the questions from time to time, and then we'll hopefully give you a good response on them. And as Mayor Pitts mentioned, we've tried to summarize. We had over 100 questions, so we've tried to summarize them into categories. And so I want to talk about the first category. We've had a lot of emails, questions about industry and what our local industries are doing or maybe not doing. And so just to let you know, we've been in constant contact with all of our local industries. We've had both one-on-one conversations, and we've been on some group phone calls with all of our industry partners. And based on the Homeland Security guidelines, all of our major industries, the majority of them, are deemed essential through the critical manufacturing sector. And so most of them are open. You've seen some of them that have chose to close for a short period of time, some that haven't. But they are deemed critical manufacturing.
Yeah, and you're right. And even some of them have gone over and beyond what is expected of them in terms of precautions, protecting their employees. And so we want to commend them for doing what's right. We've also had a lot of questions about big box stores, the retailers in our community, and our auto dealerships. And some people feel like they shouldn't be open. So we've done a lot in this area. Local orders actually go further than the state order in the fact that we've had some occupant load criteria in the local orders, meaning they had to reduce the number of people who are in their showroom or in their store at a single time. And some are doing very well, and others have some improvement to make. We've also been in direct contact with many of the big box retailers by phone, and we're doing random inspections of those facilities. We've got the Clarksville Police Department, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, and both our Building and Codes departments out working those retailers on a regular basis. They're out today, and they've been out for the last week. They still must meet social distancing order and occupant load guidelines if they're open. So please know, just because you see a full parking lot doesn't mean they're not taking precautions. It just means they're doing what we've asked them to do. Some are doing it very well.
I think that's been, for me, one of the hardest things that we've had to deal with is telling people they have to close their business and what's essential and what's non-essential.
Right.
I can't begin to tell you the conversations that Mayor Pitts and I and our staffs have had regarding certain businesses. And I actually sent out a test one day and listed some businesses and said, are these essential or are they non-essential? So I can assure you, we're not just making random decisions. There's a lot of thought going into all these protective orders that we're putting out. Several questions were around the topic of taking stronger measures. Why are so many people out? Lack of social distancing. We really think we're starting to see a little flattening in the curve. And we think that most people are adhering to not only the state, but also our local orders. And you know, there's some people that just don't follow the rules. It's a crime to shoplift, but people still do it. And so people are still going to violate these orders that we have in place. But our policies on enforcement are good. We've had a lot of communications with the Sheriff Department and the Police Department to make sure we're consistent in how we do it. And we're going to continue to enforce those. And another thing, both Mayor Pitts and I have both been out and about. We were asked the question, have you actually been out and visited businesses? Yes, we have. We've made personal visits and we've made phone calls, as Mayor Pitts mentioned, to local businesses. Another step that we've taken, and a question was people seeing a lot of people at playgrounds and parks, whatever. We've closed basically all of the structures inside all of our parks. Our open spaces still remain available, but all the structures, playgrounds, all of that has been closed.
Thank you, Mayor Durrett. We had another question or a group of questions that surrounded constitutional rights, people who think it's blown way out of proportion. You know, prior to this pandemic, government had rules, and there were rules about uses of property, how you build buildings, how you sell food, operate restaurants, and the list goes on and on. And with those freedoms that we enjoy because of our Constitution, there are limits. The rules regarding closing businesses, social distancing, is not taken lightly and are only put in place on a temporary basis. They're there to protect the health and welfare of all of those in our community. As Mayor Durrett said, we're not taking this lightly. Our responsibility is to protect all the citizens based on the information we have, and we believe that we have the opportunity to protect the greater part of our population by putting these emergency and executive orders in place.
You know, Mayor, I think that goes a lot to something that I've said publicly. It's not about me, it's about we. And so when these measures are put in place, it's not about you as an individual, but it's about our community as a whole. We've had a lot of questions about medical related, about our hospital capacity, ventilators, and testing. It's a really tough question to answer, but we're going to hit on some generalities, and we'll get in more detail with that at the close of this. But Tenova is licensed for 270 beds. They're our local hospital. Their current patient population is somewhere between 100 to 120 patients. So there's room for more patients. It depends on the need and the staffing capabilities. Understand also from a ventilator standpoint that they're in good shape right now as ventilators go. So, Mayor, you want to talk a little bit about tracking the COVID?
Yeah, let me do that. The Tennessee Department of Health does a good job with that, so neither the city or the county really monitors the movement of people who are infected. We rely on the experts, the health experts, to do that. So when the test results come in, cases are investigated, and the tracing of contacts and monitoring close contacts of people are being done, as I said, by the Tennessee Department of Health. And you can be assured that the experts there are providing us some information, but not all, because health information is a protected bit of information from a federal level. The CDC's noted that for those with COVID-19 isolated home, they are considered recovered if they meet these three criteria: no fever for at least 72 hours without using fever-reducing medications, improvement in other coronavirus-related symptoms such as cough and shortness of breath, and number 3, a period of at least 7 days has passed since symptoms first appeared. All of those things go into tracking COVID cases and then determining if you're healthy to get out and begin to move about in your workplace or among your family.
So we had several questions about what, if this thing worsens, or what are the processes for lifting some of our orders, and then post-pandemic economic relief. And I'll say this, that we have looked at some additional orders and basically have them ready to go. We don't want to issue them, but we will issue those if the new orders, or if the conditions warrant those new orders going out. Obviously, having some type of antibody testing would be good, but I don't know that we can wait for that. If we strictly wait for that, we may not ever open businesses. So it's going to be a really tough call, and we're not sure when those antibody tests will be available. So we don't know when that'll happen. But we monitor data every day, and we feel we can start minimizing, when we feel we can start minimizing some of the orders, I can assure you we'll do it. We don't like living in this world any more than anybody else the way times are now. And one of the most important things that the orders do is to limit the, one of the most important things these orders are doing, it helps prevent the shortage of medical care and medical care equipment like PPEs, hospital beds, ventilators. That's why these orders are in place. And so far, we're not at the point of being critically short on any of that, on beds, ventilators, PPE, or et cetera. And we're also working from the economic standpoint. We're working on some local programs that could give some additional economic relief to some of our businesses. As most of you know, the federal government has put a lot of stuff in place like the Paycheck Protection Plan, the unemployment claims, all of those. Those are some really good programs. I know it's been hard for people to get access to those, but I think the access has opened up a lot better here in the last few days. And so take advantage of those, but we are looking at some local programs as well.
Thank you, Mayor Durrett. The question, another question that seems to come up a lot is, when will we all get back to normal? Well, I don't have a good answer for that. I don't have an answer for that. But we all want to get back there. And when that happens, it won't be lifting all the orders at once. It will be slowly phasing in some things. Some businesses will be allowed to open before others. We must make sure that when our data shows that we start relaxing the orders, we don't want to over-relax them and then have an outbreak. Nothing would be worse than having to redo all of this all over again. So we just ask you to be patient. I know it's difficult to remain at home. And just let me say here, when you are at home and you decide you want to get out and drive around just to change the scenery, recognize that you're increasing traffic. If you get into a traffic accident, you're not only exposing the person that you may have run into or someone may have hit you, but you're also potentially exposing our first responders, our police officers, ambulance, and fire department when they come out onto the scene. So please shelter at home and recognize that if we all do our part, then we can lift these orders sooner rather than later and then get back to some sense of normalcy.
So we talked a little bit about earlier, talked about the economic relief standpoint of it. And just want to talk a little bit about small business owners and their workers. You know, there's no denying that the hardships that the orders, not only the local orders, but the state orders, have put on those type businesses. I know it's devastating to many of you, but we cannot deny the fact that this virus is deadly as well. And so when we do these things, as I mentioned earlier, we're doing them for the good of the entire community, and we can't single out one type of business or one business alone. And so it's been very, very difficult for us to make these type decisions. And as I mentioned, the federal government has some good programs in place. You can find all those links on our website, on the city's website. And so if you need help with that, just call one of our offices and we'll try to lead you through it. We'll get you in touch with whomever we can get in touch with to try to help you through this very difficult time, because I know it's very difficult on small business owners. A lot of people, I'll mention hair salons and beauty shops. It's tough. I mean, but those are face-to-face encounters, and that's where you get the spread of this deadly virus. And so I know it's difficult on y'all, but we just ask you to just stay the course and just try to focus on it's about everybody as opposed to about just a few select people.
Mayor Durrett, you mentioned that we had over 100 questions by 60 different people. And so again, we want to say thank you. And because we tried to boil this down to just main topics, we're going to put all of the answers, questions and answers on our respective city and county websites later this week. So you'll have that information. So your question will be answered. It just may not have been answered in this video. So if you want more information, go to the city website or to the county website, and you'll see those website addresses on your screen. But thank you for tuning in and listening to us provide you information, but also know that we are here to help. So please reach out to us as you can.
And I want to say thank you too. First, I really need to thank our PIOs.
Right.
They're the ones that fielded all these questions. They kind of put them all together. And then to our IT staff for helping us bring this production to you today. I also want to say thanks to my great friend, Mayor Pitts. These have been some difficult times in my office, and I know in his office as well. And it's not easy, some of the decisions we're making. But we have such a great relationship. We were texting yesterday on Easter Sunday. And so that conversation has been going on, and it'll continue to go on until we get through this crisis. So I just ask you to just please follow our guidelines. Social distancing, that's an absolute must. I don't know if we talked about it, but I know we had questions about masks. If you're going to wear a mask, just make a homemade one, but it does work because it not only keeps you, if you're contagious, it keeps you from spreading the germs, but it makes you keep your hands off your face. And that's the way this disease is spread, is by transmission to your face and to your mouth, coughing, those type things. So, I'd recommend wearing a mask in public. Social distancing, without a doubt. 6 foot apart, every chance you can be. And then lastly, as Mayor Pitt said, if you go out just driving around, if you're stuck at home, hey, I know you're bored, I know it's tough, But please don't do that, because as he said, if you get in an accident, then we've got police officers, we've got EMS folks, we've got all our first responders responding. And if you are contagious or the person you're in an accident with, that just puts everybody at risk. So I just want everybody to be safe. I want this to be over sooner rather than later, and if we all work together, it will. So God bless you.
And God bless you, and thank you, Mayor Durrett.
Thank you, Mayor.